Howdy, howdy, everybody. Welcome back to Urban Odyssey. I am joined again today with my Thursday co-host, James Carner. Welcome back to the show,
Hey,
buddy.
thanks. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me again.
I appreciate it. I really have been enjoying the last couple episodes that we've been doing. They've been really fun for me because I think the two of us together, a lot of people said that they liked that. They liked that the combination between the two of us. So I was actually going to start the show because I had taken a few screen grabs before we got started here of
Okay.
some of the comments just that people had um, said. So I just wanted to highlight those because I thought that they
Yeah,
were really kind, and
love to
I
hear
want
it.
to, yeah, I want to, just get the audience and highlight when people like what we're doing. So let me go ahead and pull the first one up. First one, the two of them were on Odyssey here. There we go. Yeah, so the first one was from at Vero67 on Odyssey. This was on the Breath Wars 2 that we did the last one. He
Okay.
said, 2.5 hours of two of the nicest, most interesting guys. You spoil us. Many things in there to reflect on. Thank you both, as always. So I
Oh,
respond. I said, thank you. Really means the world to myself and to James as well. We've gotten almost all good feedback from the last few episodes together. And then he responds again. He says, "You have such great energy together," which is what I had said. It's enjoyable while giving us information to think on. Want to listen to the video again to make sure that we heard it fully and come away as energized as both of you. That's a rare thing. And I've heard that a couple of times too. People who have said that they feel like they would like to watch more than once, which, I think if it's something that's got a lot of information and it really speaks to you, like that one that you watch, it's always good to do that. I learned so
right.
much that way.
Awesome. Yeah, me too. I really enjoy these as well because, I get to kind of take a step back and not be on the forefront of doing a show. I've been doing a show every single night, and
Right.
it's nice to just, have questions come my way and I can answer them instead of like, being the host all the time.
Right, that's always nice for sure. It's like
Yeah.
the best way I could compare that is, if if you normally you're always driving and so somebody drives and like you're riding in the passenger seat, it's like
Right.
sometimes like if you don't ride in the passenger seat for a long time or something, it's been a while. It's like, man, it's so nice. I don't have to, I can just sit back and enjoy the ride. So I
Mm-hmm.
feel it. This I think this one was on the Breath Wars first one on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
JP99 Evo says, really amazing work. All of your videos lately are top tier information with links and sources focusing on unleashing the truth, and the right folks will always uh, find it. Thank you.
Amen.
The second one from Freedom Mountain Mama. Fantastic work. I'm very aware of the biodigital convergence and transhumanism, but struggled with all the tech aspects and how it was spiritually connected. You fellas really made it make sense and connected so many dots. Thank you and
Wow.
God bless for both of you. And then I
Wow.
responded. I said, that's precisely what the cybernetics series that I'm working on now. I've been reading out of the book by Robert Duncan is called Project Soul Catcher. And in the
Mm.
first chapter, it talks about the parallels between how computer hacking is. He makes these great analogies between computer hacking and biohacking. And
Mm-hmm.
so I decided it was kind of a last minute thing that I added into the plan that I had, but I wanted to start off with just going through that first chapter because it really will set the stage, and that's what I want to do with that series. Is I want to connect those dots. How is the technology? Um, how does it end up in the spiritual domain? So that was I just had replied to that. That's when I was grabbing these earlier. So those were from the first Breath Wars one, and then there was one more that I grabbed from the same guy on Odyssey. This was, I think, maybe on it was if I grabbed on Odyssey from the first, I think this was the other video. So there were the two Breath Wars. He
Mm-hmm.
said on this one, Vero67, I expected to enjoy this a lot, but you guys beat my expectation, like
Oh,
last
wow.
time. So I guess it was the second one. The good
Wow.
energy you share when together shone through. Oh, I didn't. Here we go. I put that up. Shone uh, through the subject. Brilliant. It was also nice to know somebody else reads the Ethiopian Bible. Now I have
Mm.
more books to buy. Breath Wars series. Well, I was going to say they're free, so you don't actually have to buy them. So he doesn't. They're not available in print, so they're free on his website. I'll give the links. JamesCarner.com is his website, but I'll
Hmm.
put them in the description after we finish the video and whatnot. But I wanted to do tonight's show primarily because a few people that I have watched or listened to recently have mentioned some, maybe just in passing, or they've also found a lot of information, or just they've gone in the direction of studying the Ethiopian. How do you say it? Is it Tewahedo?
Tewahedo.
Tewahedo. Okay, so
Yeah,
yeah.
that's how I pronounce it.
Well, I guess
I'm
that's the
pretty
best
sure
way to
it's
do it.
Tewahedo or Tewahedo, but I pronounce it Tewahedo. And my friends from Ethiopia, which an entire family of Ethiopians are taking care of my disabled son. So, I say Tewahedo, and they seem to think that that's normal. That's the right
Yeah.
pronunciation. So, yeah, the Tewahedo Orthodox books. So when I decided to look for breath in other esoteric uh, religions, my thought process was to figure out if breath was mentioned in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my website. There are two. That's on JamesCarner.com. There are two uh, versions. One is the original American Bible that they pass out in church in Ethiopia. It's not English because they don't speak English, they speak Amharic. And so when I went and was looking for the breath in other religions, all of the esoteric religions like the New Age were all taking the breath. And I wanted to find out, well, who in other denominations talk about the breath. And I stumbled across Ethiopia.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went through the Ethiopian text, it said breath way more than my Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And that just raised alarms for me because I was dead center at researching breath, because here's how breath really came. Cain and Abel, the first two kids of Adam and Eve. Cain and Abel ended up in a fight. One had an offering that God was pleased with, the other didn't have an offering that God was pleased with.
Mm-hmm.
Cain killed his brother Abel, and what he set into motion was a new book of life, but inverted, a way of getting the spark of life from God. Now, God took Adam with his hands, formed Adam out of clay, and blew into his nostrils. This is the first time he created anything, as far as a body is concerned, with his hands. So
Mm-hmm.
that's very special. And when he blew the breath of life into Adam, he became alive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, the Bible also talks about the breath of life is inside the blood.
Yeah.
So blood becomes like an offering to God, saying, I cut the blood of an animal, cut the neck. I'm giving back the life that you gave this animal back to you
Mm-hmm.
in in love. Okay. Now, I don't think that Cain realized the importance of it, because Cain wasn't interested in going the way of God. And you can tell this through the way that he spoke, especially speaking to God. When God says, hey, where's your brother? After he killed him, God knows he killed him. And he's like, am I my brother's keeper? I mean, who talks to God like that? And so Cain was already wanting authority over his family. He was already wanting something more than what they had at the cave of treasures. And so that's where I found in the Ethiopian book not only that it mentions breath more than most, it also talks about the first and second book of Adam and Eve, and then the Cave of Treasures, which I've never read before. And after reading it, it just blew my mind as to answering the questions that I've been looking for in regards to Adam and Eve and their story.
Really,
And
that's fascinating.
so when Cain cut his brother, he set in motion the first blood ritual.
Hmm.
Okay, now Abel already killed an animal to give it's like life for life.
Right.
That was the idea. God's spirit is in the blood. When Cain killed his brother, the blood cries out from the ground saying, "Look what happened, God."
Hmm.
And God addresses him and he's like, "Yeah, I killed him."
Right.
It's like, "You did a horrible sin." But what it did was it started the first human sacrifice.
Right.
And it started what would be considered an inversion of taking the spark of life for power and authority.
Well, in the same manner, exactly in that sense, if you're doing bookkeeping, you have two sides of your ledger. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's basically the creation of the ultimate debt, a blood debt or a obligation of life. And that's why it immediately came to my mind the fascination with blood and blood types. Now, this subject right here is very hard to find information on. So, what I did find was in the East, if you go to like Japan or China,
Mm-hmm.
they tend to look at blood types the same way that people in the West, might look at, what is your horoscope sign? In the East, they look at people's blood types for like, are we compatible to be in a relationship or get married? They look at it that way. So,
Mm-hmm.
but the idea of everything I was able to find, primarily from Rudolf Steiner, who's an occult esoteric author,
Mm-hmm.
is exactly what you said, that the life force is in the blood. And so very interesting. That's probably why they're so fascinated with their blood type and whatnot.
Yeah, and a lot of people will look at the bloodline and assume that it's different than our blood. Like
Hmm.
what you just showed, Rh negative. Oh, well, that's
Hmm.
a different bloodline. That's the bloodline of Cain. That's not necessarily true. Blood is blood is blood. Cain and Abel came from Adam and Eve. There's no difference between Cain's blood and our blood. So this whole Rh negative thing,
Hmm.
it's just a type of blood, but that's not biblical when it comes to authority. So
Hmm.
even though, let's just say, the dynasties out there are looking for, people of a certain type of a bloodline, it doesn't give them any authority.
Hmm.
The only authority that they can get is from taking the breath of life from us.
Exactly.
And these are shards, these are pieces, these are tiny little pieces of the spark of life that God gave us that they take from us when we sin or
Hmm.
when they sin against us. And we release, the sin, right? If someone is coaching me into sin and I do the sin, I'm willingly giving up a shard, a little piece of millions and millions and millions of pieces of the breath of life that you have in your bloodstream.
Kind of,
So,
in a way, betraying your humanity.
in a way,
Yeah.
but instead of us looking at sin as what makes God angry, that's not the issue.
Hmm.
The issue is the more sin in our lives, the more breath we give to the enemy so the enemy can breathe. Because the enemy, when kicked out of heaven, along with 1/3 of the angels, plus the 200 watchers, the second rebellion,
Hmm.
they don't have access to the spark of life. The only way that they can get energy is from us. And that energy comes from little bits and shards of the spark of life that's inside us, in our blood.
Hmm.
That's what they're after. A cult will shed blood to take the power away from that person so it doesn't go back into heaven. Because the breath was supposed to be a communion. You breathe in, whoops, excuse me. You breathe in and then you breathe out. The breath out goes back up to God as a sacrifice.
Hmm.
And when we breathe in, that comes from God. It's like a dialysis machine, right? It cleans you up. The more you breathe, this is why the Bible says, be still and know that I am the Lord. Because if you're still, the only thing that you're doing is you're breathing.
Breathing,
And
yeah.
God is saying, that's me, that's my name, that's the gift I gave you. And as long as you have breath on earth, you belong to me.
So
So
I
the
was gonna,
enemy. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's interesting because have you heard of the kind of this experiment where people have to sit alone in a room? They don't have a phone. They just have to sit by themselves, or they can shock themselves. And pretty much the results of the study is that people don't want to be alone in silence anymore.
Well, yeah, we are inundated with things to do,
Right.
app after app after app. Text, phone, email, just direct messages, instant messages. It's constant nonstop.
Someone told
And
me that your silence it's a stage or a setting where your thoughts occur. So if I'm paying attention to you, I'm giving you my quote unquote silence, or the here's put stuff on the stage of my mind. Somebody said that, it's always stuck with me. So that was interesting because you made that connection with breathing and silence.
hmm yeah, so when you're alone and you start breathing, you be still. And all you do, the only thing you can think of if you're thinking of God is thinking about the breath. When you be still and know that I am God, that means you're in communion with Him, breathing in His breath of life and giving it back as a sacrifice.
Hmm.
And some people, if they want, they can do the Lord's Prayer before they do this. But this is a way of like recharging your spark of life to give you more authority over the devil and his lies. And so it's not about sin. Sin is what we're blamed for by the accuser.
Hmm.
And sin was used to distract us from finding the breath, from finding out that there's this war against mankind to steal their breath to give as a sacrifice to the fallen angels who use that for authority and power. You see, when God gives you breath, when you're born, you take your first breath, you have a signet ring. Okay, you're royalty. You're clothed in purple. You're a prince and princess of the kingdom of heaven.
Hmm.
That is power. That's that signet ring, that signature that you belong, and what you say is written in heaven. They want to take that signature from you. And that's why nobody talks about breath. Nobody even talks about vampires and what they really do.
I like that.
Vampires don't drink blood. Drinking blood doesn't put the spark of life in you. The spark of life is spiritual. And vampires instead, the real vampires, they will execute someone and then put that spark of life either into crystals, gold, mica, silver, or any conduit that can
It's
hold a spirit.
Have you ever
And
heard
it's only temporary.
diamonds are forever? So memorial diamonds is because
There you go.
they will turn the sacrifice into a diamond, and so it's seen as it's beauty forever. Diamonds are forever. And yeah, it's interesting. And I was going to say this idea of breath being in the Ethiopian canon so much. Do you think that it's um, directly has to do with the fact that the Ethiopian canon isn't hiding something? I guess is the best way. Do you think that it's been hidden from the King James Bible, all of the Bibles that people are reading in the West? Do you think that it's been hidden, and that the Ethiopian canon may have preserved what has been hidden elsewhere? It's a better articulation.
I want to say yes, but I don't have enough evidence yet to support that claim.
Hmm.
I had enough to write a book to point towards Ethiopian secrets. Something's happening in Ethiopia, and that goes along with my Ethiopian research, where I did an examination between the Old Testament Ethiopian Old Testament and the Old Testament of the King James 1611 approved Bible.
Mhm.
And I've recently started doing examinations of the New Testament, comparing it to the Ethiopian. And the arc and information is practically the same, except for some archaic tone that English uh, makes it
Language.
sound like God's angry. And I've got
It's
examples. I'll
language.
show. I'll show
Yeah.
those examples.
Yeah.
Might as well do it now.
Yeah. There's a
So
little screen share button if you. It's
no,
looks
no,
like a
no, no.
screen.
I'm good. No, I'm just going to read it to you.
Okay.
So the Ethiopian versus the King James. When the New Testament overlaps, the Ethiopian and King James are usually very close in the New Testament.
Hmm.
So, but the bigger differences actually show up more in the Old Testament and prophets and the historical books, especially in the wordings that changes the tone of God's action. And these words are important because one word can change an entire sentence, right? And so in Jeremiah 18, between the Ethiopian and the King James, there's two words that are different. One is relent, and the other is repent. In the nation, and this is in the Ethiopian, it says, if that nation turns from its evil, I will relent of the disaster. In the King James, it says, if that nation turned from their evil, I will repent of the evil. So there's some differences here. One, in the Ethiopian, it says, I will relent of the disaster. And the other says, I will repent of the evil. Those are two different meanings.
Doesn't look like that was a translation error.
It was not a
Yeah.
translation error.
Yeah.
It's Old English
That's interesting.
phrasing, and this is how the Americ turns out. And my translations are from Ge'ez to Americ to modern English. Okay, so that's a real difference in how it sounds. And the Ethiopian, for me, and what I found is it reads clearer to modern ears, and I don't know why.
So
Like
okay,
God,
I
like for example, let me finish
go
just
ahead.
so
Yeah,
I
you're
have this
good.
one.
You're good.
Yeah, like God relents from disaster. Okay, the King James phrase "repent of the evil" can sound like God did evil, even though historically evil can mean calamity or judgment.
Mhm.
So the doctrine may not change, but the listener's perception of God can.
That's
So
interesting.
when you read the Old English 1611 King James original, it sounds like God's angry, but he's not, because the Ethiopian complements the whole situation. In fact, when you put them both together, you can see the big picture here. So they actually complement each other. And the the translation is correct in Old English, and it's correct in modern English.
I wonder if
From
this has something to do with it.
Go ahead. What?
Well, I've been fascinated for the longest time because there was something called the Great Vowel Shift.
Hmm.
Everybody just started talking different and they don't know why. And I've been fascinated with this for a long time because I have been constantly finding, similar to what you just described, there are these, subtle manipulations that seem to have happened with some authority because, they happened, in different places.
Mm-hmm.
How do you enforce and make people talk different? Well, you have to change the population or the education. But it's interesting that you made that connection because that sounds like the only other, if it wasn't translation, and like, let's just put conspiracy off to the side for a minute. What if it was something to do with this weird shift in language that is still yet unexplained? And then you keep saying the language that the Ethiopian, or you call it Amharic.
Mm-hmm.
Amharic. I wonder if there may be some connection to Amharic and America. I'm not sure, but I think I've heard that there might be some connection to there.
I don't know, but I do know that the English language was created around the year 600. So it was from Celtic, from Germanic, Germanic. I don't know, um, not
You're
German, but
Saxon.
Austrian language. What do they call that? I forgot. But it's a mixture of all different kinds, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of funny that like that's kind of around the year 666
Mm-hmm.
is where some theologians were pointing towards. And this new language that comes in, which, you know, you've seen a lot of people talk about the conspiracies of, you know, spelling, spell to cast a spell.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. We have no proof, but it could have been created to change, maybe change the way that people perceive, you know, the Bible on
I
purpose, a new language to confuse the masses, because the American, it's lovely, it's beautiful. King James is harsh. And how can it be that this language, English, pops up right around the year, right around the year when what seems to be the, you know, when Satan was in the pit for 1,000 years?
right.
It's just bizarre. There's a lot of pieces that need to be connected and put together.
This I wanted
But
to
go ahead.
well, something it's interesting because there was a book that I came across in connection to, it's called Roget's Thesaurus, and it talks about, in this book is called Demon Hit List. It says Roget's Thesaurus is a unique dictionary catalog of synonyms arranged in topical form. Because demons tend to cluster in family groupings, the thesaurus can be an amazingly helpful instrument to identify demons within a specific category. Commonly, spirits in related family groups are under a ruler. In deliverance, the gift of discernment can zero in on a particular spirit. Often, the Holy Spirit will give one the ruler's name. When this spirit is forced to manifest himself, his name, located in the thesaurus,
Thesaurus. Yeah.
becomes a tool to uncover his supportive network of demons. This will
Right.
expedite deliverance and assure a clean sweep of that particular
Particular group.
group. And
Mm-hmm.
what it just to kind of show you what I meant. For instance, if you go and you look at Abaddon or Abaddon, then
Mm-hmm.
you start looking at words like abandonment or
Mm-hmm.
abdomen,
Mm-hmm.
abnormal, abomination,
Right.
abortion,
Mm-hmm.
absolve. So my point being is exactly where you were coming in there. I really wonder. I mean, I don't wonder. There was some definitely manipulation of language because we have a great vowel shift that just happened almost by an act of divine intervention. But
Now,
um,
this vowel shift, when did it happen according to your notes?
yeah, so it says the great vowel here. I'll put this up again. The great vowel
Because
shift happened around the
one,
14th to 18th century,
when?
between in the late 14th and continued into the 18th century.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Well, now is the vowel shift only in English, or is this in other languages?
It's a good question. It looks like it was primarily in the English language. It
Hmm.
says characterized by systematic alterations in pronunciation of long stressed vowels, primarily involving their raising and diphthongization. This shift transformed the vowel system from Middle English to early modern English, occurring generally over several centuries.
Mm-hmm.
It says it affected Southern British English dialects more prominently, while Northern varieties experienced partial or different changes
Hmm.
in a chain like manner, where the highest long vowels, such as E and U,
Mm-hmm.
diphthongized to A and U. Mid high vowels, such as
Yeah.
E and O, raised to E and U, and long mid vowels to from A to long mid vowels A to E raised to E. I don't know how the phonetics work, but here's the table if anybody wants to just look at it. Well, uh, it's an interesting, phenomena. Things like this are not, they don't just randomly happen. You know, I don't, I'm not convinced that this would just happen over a few centuries unless there was something, you know, why are they unable to give us a reason why this happened? wouldn't you think that they would be able to say, oh, well, there's a big war and the population changed slightly, and maybe that's why? I don't know. It just seems interesting. And then we get back to the Ethiopian canon, and you start making the compare. What was the first thing that you mentioned? Could you refresh me on that?
The first thing you mean, like the
You
change in,
repent or relent?
yeah, repent and relent. Yeah, the difference was in the Ethiopian, it says, if that nation turns from its evil, I will relent of the disaster. And the King James says, if that nation turned from their evil, I will repent of the evil, saying that, like, I will repent of my evil. And that paints a picture of God as angry. And
Relent
it
means
doesn't stop there. That's not even that's just one example of hundreds that I found.
yeah. I would like to hear more because I'm very fascinated now. Relent, to become less rigid or hard, to yield, to dissolve, to melt, to delinquus, from
Right,
Webster's 1913.
right. And to repent is to turn away from and to not do anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So relent still is more, you know, benign versus
Repent means
repent.
like you condemn it.
Yeah, like, and from the evil, saying that from my evil, and from my disaster. It's difference in wording. Another one is Jeremiah 11, where the two words that are different are stubbornness and imagination.
Mm-hmm.
In the Ethiopian, it says, everyone followed the stubbornness of his evil heart. And in the King James, it says, walked everyone in the imagination of their evil heart. Now, that matters because stubbornness sounds like willful rebellion, while imagination can sound softer or more abstract to modern readers. And basically, the point is, it's the same covenant breach, but a different emotional force. If you really read it, it just feels different,
Could you read
you
it one
know.
more time?
Yeah, in the Ethiopian in Jeremiah 11, it says, everyone followed the stubbornness of his evil heart. And in the King James, walked everyone in the imagination of their evil heart. So
Mm-hmm.
it's stubbornness versus imagination. Stubbornness is more like, you know, telling your kid, don't do this, and they don't, and you say they're stubborn, versus don't do this, and you say, well, you're imaginative
Delusional.
or delusional
Well,
or
that's because
whatever.
if you live in your imagination too much, you start to become delusional.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, just to the reader, just reading the King James Old Testament first without ever finding grace yet through Paul, you're gonna it's setting you up for an angry God. Another example, and again, that's an emotional force that we're getting for both. But another one is in Lamentations, and the two words are pursued versus persecuted. In the Ethiopian, in Lamentations, it says, you have covered yourself with anger and pursued us. In the King James, it says, thou hast covered with anger and persecuted us.
Hmm.
And this one's
Those are
important
big
because,
changes.
well, pursued sounds like covenant consequence following rebellion. Persecuted can sound harsher today, almost like unjust oppression. So both do serve the judgment in what it's trying to say, meaning the arc of what God's trying to say. They say it. They do. But
These are weird. There's definitely something to these changes. These are they change a lot of the meaning. You're a
right,
lot.
it sounds more severe to modern ears.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
Another one in Jonah, there's two words. One is called plant, and the other is gourd. In the Ethiopian, it says, you have had pity on the plant. In the King James, it says, thou hast had pity on the gourd. Now, this is not a doctrinal difference, but it shows a translation style. Ethiopian gives plain modern clarity, while the King James preserves older English botanical wording. And the message stays the same, but accessibility changes. So when the texts overlap, They usually agree in structure and doctrine, which they both do. The Ethiopian so far is it's doctrine. It is. Same with King James too,
Right.
because we compared King James against the Dead Sea Scrolls. But the wording can change how the listener hears God. In Jeremiah, Ethiopian says God will relent of the disaster, while the King James says God will repent of the evil. So that does not necessarily change the theology, but it does change the sound of God's character to a modern ear. And that is the kind of difference I'm trying to point out.
Hmm. I was going to show people your series. I meant to do it earlier, but that link is already in the description for anybody who would like to check out the extensive. This is a very detailed series. I've put them all in a playlist on James' channel on Rumble. He's got, how many do you got? Almost
42 so
45,
far.
I
Yeah.
think.
42. Yeah.
Yeah, part 42. Then there's like a few extra like parts that weren't numbered. So there's 45 videos in here, but you've been going like very thoroughly, and so I wanted to show people that, and I'll continue to share that because I think it's very fascinating. This I told you tonight before we went on, when we were talking about what we were going to do. I said, this was meant to be a bit of a preview and a mini summary because, to do all of this detail that you've already covered in one night would be just crazy impossible. So for people who are very interested to know more like I am, I've seen a few of these episodes. I haven't caught them all. This playlist is definitely where you would like to go to learn more about it because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. I mean,
fascinating.
if you want to know the difference between the King James wording and the Ethiopian wording, I did every single book and I pulled every part of each book that was different and then compared it. And the only difference between the King James and the Ethiopian is the archaic tone and a few words that make God sounds angry in the Old Testament, when in the Ethiopian, God's not angry at all. So the translation is perfect from Ge'ez to Amharic to English, and and both of those are from both books of the Hebrew and original Greek. And then if you look on the other side, where we get the King James, it goes from Hebrew, Greek to Latin to English, and it so far when you compare the King James to the Dead Sea Scrolls, line for line, it's the word. It hasn't changed. Now, that doesn't mean that there's books out there that say King James where there are not missing verses. Like, for example, one verse that's missing in a lot of Bibles, and Boots knows this, he's one of my listeners because he showed me the book that he has, that it does not have Ecclesiastes 4:12, which talks about
Really
which talks about a threefold cord that you can use to bind demonic entities. And so
it's interesting.
why would that be removed? And that's just one example of many. But again, when you buy a Bible, there is no, I guess you could say, like a helper book to help you make sure you're getting the correct King James. Because I did a show on the King James. King James wasn't a bad king, and he did not write the Bible. He just issued it. He put it into decree to make it happen. And it was just
Hmm.
at that time they needed a modern version of the Bible in that time, and they also included the Apocrypha in it. And it
Hmm.
turns out the Apocrypha, which are like 15 books, that the theologians were butting heads over, as if some would say this is theology, some would say it's not. Some would say, well, it's not as Greek, it's more Hebrew. And so they would argue about it, but it still went into the King James. But in the 17th century, a publishing house, a Protestant publishing company, decided to remove the Apocrypha because it'd be cheaper to print and spread more Bibles. So the Apocrypha wasn't purposely removed by Rome or the Vatican or Catholic Church, which I thought it was. And that's just simply not true. It was removed out of convenience to make it smaller, because back then in the 1700s, printing a book took a long time.
It was, yeah.
You know, you're talking about the glue, the binding, the leather, all of that stuff. One book that's smaller can fit in. A lot of people are saying that the reason was is because it could fit into a horse satchel, but the other one couldn't because it was like this thick, you know.
Well, yeah.
So, but yeah, I was disappointed because I've been wanting to just put the hammer on the Vatican, put the hammer on the Catholic Church for changing the Bible, and they did not. And my examination between the Ethiopian, so far, the King James lines up with it. The only difference is King James just, for some reason, paints an angry God,
Mm-hmm.
while the Ethiopian shows that God's very patient, and he takes hundreds of years before he actually issues judgment. Which I didn't know this.
Yeah, I mean, I really that's what I meant when you were talking about some of those differences. You know, those differences really reflect, like, they really do kind of change a lot of the subtext. I know what you mean. They are very. Uh, when I see that, I almost think it's duplicitous. Like, that's just the word that comes to mind. Let's not say that it is or isn't, but it's almost like, it fits, but it changes things a lot. It's like, should I use set you free or should I use make you free?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like,
one word changes everything.
so okay, let's segue into that. So what do you take from that whole idea of uh one is angrier in the King James light, the way that the words paint God in this light,
Mm-hmm.
or the Ethiopian, where it paints God as more gentle, and more, I guess maybe you could say, more forgiving. What do you think of that difference? How do you look at that?
If you examine the type of people the Ethiopians are, they're very gentle, they're very loving, they're very supportive, they're very family oriented,
Right.
they're very, very happy. They're just a beautiful people. And when you compare that, let's just say, to the 1611 uh, Old English people in Europe, you know,
1666
yeah,
Sestakui Act.
yeah. So, were they, loving? Were they happy? I,
Doesn't look like it.
I would say the majority, sure, but there were some that weren't.
It's
But
also the plague.
the way that things were back then was a lot harder for them
Yeah.
there than it was for the Ethiopians, right? The only thing that was hard for them was finding water in the desert. Right. And they have two types. If you look at the whole state of, or country of Ethiopia, half of it to the left is all lush, beautiful, almost jungle-like, and the other on the right is just all desert. And it's split. It's very bizarre.
You
And
don't
the
ever hear
Ethiopian,
about them either. Like, when do they talk about the Ethiopians in the news? You don't ever hear them talk about Ethiopians.
you don't. And they've been attacked twice by Italy,
Really?
which houses the Vatican.
It sure
Yeah,
does.
they were attacked once pre-World War I by Italy for some reason to colonize it. And they were attacked again by Mussolini during World War II. And Mussolini didn't fully colonize it, but did stay in a certain area for a while. And they were looking for something, and they weren't able to find it. And this goes back to the whole Ark of the Covenant research that I
Right.
found
That's what came to my mind too.
when I was doing research on, because dude, there's so many other books in the Ethiopian that I've never read before that they call apocrypha, which some people will think of the word apocrypha as apocalyptic, but that's not what it
It
means.
means time, doesn't it?
It just means additions.
Oh, okay. I was just
And
wondering what the root
additions, and
means.
it was put in the middle of the Old and New Testaments.
Hmm.
So and a lot of scholars would say, well, they've had issues with certain words and phrasings that wouldn't line up with the Old Testament, but because it's all the Apocrypha is Old Testament, right? But regardless, what I saw was in, I think it's the Book of Jubilees. Don't quote me on that. I don't think it's Jubilees. I'll have to pull that information up. But when I was reading the Apocrypha and the Ethiopian, it blew my mind because I heard about this, but I never saw the words. And it says that God spoke to the ark when King Solomon fell. And he spoke to the ark and said, leave with Amalek the first. Now, Amalek the first was the Queen of Sheba's son, whom she had with Solomon. So this is a son of Solomon, royalty, and also with the Queen of Sheba, royalty. This is a prince of now Israel and Ethiopia. And when he turned of age, we don't know what that is, 12, 16, 18, we don't know. But when he turned into an adult, Queen of Sheba stayed while he went back to the country to rule Ethiopia.
Mm-hmm.
So God told the ark to go with him. So that's something I've never heard of before.
This go. Have you ever heard of the Moors? These ties in with the Moors. They come
Sounds
into
familiar.
because I've talked to and done an interview with Michelle Gibson, who talks about regions of America, what was going on, how they built certain infrastructure only to tear it down 10 years later. You know, they built these trolley rail yards all over and built these huge electric park, Coney Island, and they all burned down. And then they
Oh,
tear
the
the
Moors. Yeah.
yeah, and so it's interesting because it lands squarely with Ethiopia. And then you go and you start to look at, for instance, the Isle of Man, and you look at their coats of arms, and they have this weird symbol. It's three legs. It's a triform, and it's three legs, and this symbol and the symbols of Ethiopia and the Moors, they all converge. And it's interesting that you added that apocrypha layer. I've never knew that.
Well, there's also something that comes out of Ethiopia that I didn't know about. And since I've been, okay, last year when I was doing work on Ethiopian Canon, a volcano blew up in Ethiopia. And a volcano hasn't blown up in Ethiopia in 12,000 years.
Mm.
And the Ethiopian volcano's name was Haley Gubby, which in Ge'ez or Ge'ez translates to high cave. And the cave of treasures is in the high desert.
That's interesting.
And I'm like, what is going on? I was tripping out, and my audience, when they were watching me live, I got the news, it was live. I just went onto the show and I'm like, you guys are going to believe this, but, because I just finished, I think I just finished, or I was telling them about the book, The Stone That Speaks, that I wrote,
Mm-hmm.
and saying, you're not going to believe this, but we've been talking about the Cave of Treasures and what lies inside the Cave of Treasures. Well, a volcano just blew up, and the plume did not follow the Gulf Stream that it normally goes. The plume should have went down south and then east. It just went straight east. Bizarre. And what it led me to was like get on Google Maps and start looking for the Cave of Treasures, because in that plume, what it is, I don't know. I'm just saying, I'm speculating here, but is God trying to point us to the Cave of Treasures? Is there something there? Well, there just so happens to be.
What is the Cave of Treasures? Give me a brief recap of that.
Okay, so and this is in Genesis, when Adam and Eve were banished from the Garden of Eden, they left into the desert. And this is east of Ethiopia, I believe. And east of Ethiopia is where they found a high, high mountain with a cave in it. And Adam and Eve went inside and started to live there. Down below into the valley from the high cave was a river that they were able to get water and to fish or whatnot and actually live and survive there. And it turns out that Adam and Eve were tempted by Satan at the front of their cave entrance for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And It was Eve who would stop Adam from buying into the lie that Satan was trying to tempt them with. So Satan and his angels would come in the form of light, right? Illuminated. And then they go, Adam, Eve, God, I'm a messenger of God. He just said that you can go back now to Eden.
Mm-hmm.
And then Adam would be like, "Oh, hey, the messenger Eve, they're here. We're gonna leave." And she's all, "Stop! I know that voice." Eve never got tempted again. When she got tempted once, she repented from it fully. And she was the only one that stopped Adam every time when he tried to follow Satan out of the cave and into wherever Satan wanted to lead them. And there was one point in the Cave of Treasures, and this is in the Ethiopian Apocrypha. You can read
Mm-hmm.
it. It's in the book Cave of Treasures, that Adam fell for it, walked out of the cave, and Eve was trying to pull him back in. And as he walked out, to go follow God's messengers to go back to Eden, Satan started laughing, pointing his finger and mocking them, saying, "Ha, I fooled you. You're such an idiot." That's exactly what he was doing. So just mocking, laughing, like this guy is so stupid, you
It's
know?
like what came to my mind is in that allegory. If you look at it, this allegory, they're made and they're safe in their cave. Think of
Mm-hmm.
the the wild. Animals will get you. They're safe in their cave. They've got
Mm-hmm.
everything they need. Okay, and we're going to go out and we're this temptation. Go out and do. Here's a good plan. Here's a plan. Go out and do this, that, the other. It's
Mm-hmm.
almost like this utopian. We'll do have this great imaginary fairy tale world, and all you got to do is obey and follow the dictators, CBCCs and stuff. It's just like this utopian idea that everything could be perfect, but at the end of the day, you've got everything you need, but you're not satisfied. Bottomless pit, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And since they left paradise to live in the desert, that's where they had Cain and Abel. That's where Cain and Abel had Seth, and then Abel's son. I forgot his name. And Adam, before his death, he was turning around 1,000 years old. He commissioned Seth to chisel on a tablet or a stone all of the records of what Eden was, their times in the Cave of Treasure, and what God is going to do with the second Adam, who will be the Son of Man. And this is called the Tablet of Witness. And there's no verse that says it, but if you're reading it from a top view, it really looks like that someone is going to find the Tablet of Witness. And it's going to prove, because it also says it was written in Ge'ez. So the Ethiopians said in their literature, in their Bible, that Ge'ez was pre-flood language.
It's interesting.
So Ge'ez was what Noah and his family spoke.
Hmm.
Oh, it gets even more interesting. It looks like it's saying that during the end of days, when mankind completely again goes and believes into other gods, like a new AI god that's coming,
Mm-hmm.
that the tablet of witness will be found, and it will prove, one, the ancient language of Ge'ez, pre-flood; two, Jesus is coming in the Son of Man; three, carbon date that thing, and it can prove that this is pre-flood, and that would take all Zoroastrian, Hinduism, Mesopotamia, Samaria religions, all religions pre and post Tower of Babel, and make them obsolete,
The
because
second
it's going to be the witness of the true story of God and the beginning.
So the second Adam, this, how did you say it? The Son of Man or the Son of Man. Is this the God that man creates?
The second Adam was supposed to fulfill and be and procreate with Eve in Eden and fulfill what God wanted them to do. Jesus had to come and become the second Adam and be sin free to pay for the atonement of the ransom that was held against us through the Garden of Eden. So the second Adam is what they call Jesus. And Jesus had to be the perfect Adam, the perfect Son of God, to replace Adam's sin, to replace his fall, to replace their mistake. So the tablet of witness, if found, would prove Jesus, pre-flood religion, pre-flood language, and talks about Eden and the cave of treasures and the 1,000 years and the promise that God gave them and what they prayed about with God while they lived there. You're muted.
Sorry, thank you for that. What people lack, they look at the Bible, but then they don't look at history. You have to put the Bible and history together, and then they show you that history validates the Bible because the prophecies come true.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I wonder if that has to do with it. I mean,
Well, some speculate that the stone itself will be some type of a special obsidian, like a green stone. And if you point towards a conspiracy, you could say, well, the emerald tablets,
right?
this could be, it could be those were, meant to replace the cave of treasure tablet that complements the Ten Commandments.
Mm-hmm.
So if you really look at it, there were 3 tablets. 2 of them got destroyed when Moses found out that the children of Israel decided to worship a golden calf while he was gone for 2 months. He had to climb back up the mountain and have God again with his finger right on that tablet. The
Right.
10 Commandments again. I don't know if you knew that. He had to go back up
I
because
knew
he
that he was the
ruined.
first lawbreaker, but then he has to go and ask for, hey, that's like a humbling experience.
Oh, yeah, because he's up there with God for 2 months, no food, no water, and God's like, hey, I think you better go get back down there. Your brother just made a calf, a golden calf, and they're worshiping that. So the tablet of witness is not all is not it's not the only mystery. The Ethiopian canon also talks about, and this may blow your mind, it talks about Noah and his eldest son went to the cave of treasures, took the bones of Adam, brought them to Golgotha, which is the hill of the skull, or the place where Jesus died, and buried the bones under where Jesus was going to be crucified.
That's interesting.
The blood of Jesus hitting those bones would fulfill prophecy covenant through the Adamic bloodline. And I talk about this in my book, The Stone That Speaks.
It's almost like a circuit.
Well, almost.
You're closing the loop.
I think that we are just a primitive version. You could call us like we're the erector set
So,
of
so,
modern technology. When you
so
compare third and fourth dimensions.
this guy Gary Wayne, he gets into this idea of the people from day 6, because when you look at there are 2 creations. First, there's the creation of man and woman at the same time, but then you have the creation of Adam, and then you have the creation of Eve from Adam. And
Mm-hmm.
so, how do the question that he makes that gets people thinking is, Who was Cain afraid of? After he gets the mark, he's afraid. Who is he afraid of if they're the only people there? Well, the people from day 6. These would account for these monkey, Neanderthal, lesser intelligent humans. They were primitives, or they were the hairy, like Esau, the hairy beast men.
Hmm. I can't say much about that because I haven't done any research about,
It just came to mind. You have
hairy
to look into
dudes.
it.
But I know that the Bible talks about Jacob putting on a deer coat
Because they hide it as
to
beasts.
mimic his brother's hairiness. You know, you could argue symbolic. You can argue Bigfoot.
It's all
I
different
don't
layers to it.
know. But what I do know is that Cain wasn't afraid of anyone. He wasn't even afraid of God. And in my book, The Crown of Cain, he it appears, and there's no proof, but it really looks like he was given God status by the fallen angels. And they used him to create the first blood ritual to release breath so that they could feed and start power. And they didn't have power when Adam and Eve were in the cave of treasures. The only power they had was to just tell them to come out of the cave. They had no power to take them anywhere. They only had the power to point and mock. That's what the book says. So Cain wasn't afraid of anything. He was given a mark that protected him from all of his brothers and sisters. And the Cave of Treasures talks about Adam, Eve, and all the kids, dude. A lot of people lived there. It wasn't just in the cave. That's where Adam and Eve, that was their main place. But
He
everyone
says the
else lived
land of
all,
Nod.
yeah, they lived all over, and they spread, dude, and they were all came from Adam and Eve. So hundreds, if not thousands of children, and they all honored and loved their mother and their father. And when they passed on, they closed the cave and sealed it. And the Bible says God put a mist over it, and it became sacred, holy, and protected.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how, but it says that Noah and his son found it. But what's really weird is Ethiopia is like really far down from the Middle East. And you'd have to go up through the Red Sea just to, I'm not really good at geography, but you have to go through a lot of sailing to get there, right?
Really?
Yeah. And what I find, and this is just an opinion, this is not doctrine, it really looks like that when the waters were receding, that Noah and his son, the first stop was at the Cave of Treasures, because it's a high cave. It's like 10,000, 11,000, 12,000 feet above sea level.
Mm-hmm.
It's even higher than 22,000 actually. Believe it or not, the high that area is like almost. It doesn't look like Mount Everest, but it's high. So it's the first land that they where they were around. They could have poked out. They could have grabbed the bones of Adam from there. I don't know. God could have led them from the first dove that Noah found, and then they floated on towards that, grabbed the bones, and then put them on the boat. Then as the waters receded, ended up in Ararat.
Yeah.
North, like 1,000 miles north.
See, while I'm hearing you talk about it, my mind is going almost in a symbol manner, because think about it. If you're in a big ark and the waters are high, you're towards the sky. You're going high up into the sky. Let's think of in this, what I mean by symbol is, if we're going to the sky, we're getting too advanced. We're so smart. We're getting to the level of having the knowledge of God. okay, so if you're in a boat and the waters are high, well, we know sea and water. What is this? It symbolizes people, or
Mm.
the masses, the sea of people. So look, I mean, if I look at it, the symbols kind of follow too, which is interesting, as they always, I mean, they do in all of the different, any verse you read, you can have a different way of looking at it, and there's always something to be learned from it. Someone in your audience told me while I was guest hosting, they said they call it the living word because if you listen, it will speak to you. That's what they said.
Hmm.
And in the same way, you can always look at it and you can always get something new from it.
I like that.
But yeah, in that symbolic sense, this cave that's sealed is up high. So, let's just say for the symbolic purposes, whatever's inside the cave is this knowledge that Adam and Eve had, and they're, sealed in the cave. Okay, so when the seas rise, or, when perhaps society starts rising back up to that height again, they're able to go back in there and get it. But the sea and the rising and the ark association implies apocalyptic. So I don't know. There's an interesting subtext there. I think it's just what I was thinking of when I heard you talking about it. It was like I was following it in my mind that way.
Well, remember I was telling you about Italy invading Ethiopia twice and
Yeah,
failing. They
I
never colonized it
didn't know that.
fully.
Oh,
Vatican just so happens to be located in Italy.
sure
What are they
does.
looking for? What did Mussolini need to gain power over the West and and America at that time? I think they were looking for the Ark of the Covenant, and I think that they believed that it was in Ethiopia, and the Ethiopians say this is their tradition. The Ark of the Covenant at that time and still is today guarded by a single monk,
Hmm.
one monk, and of all of the research that they could find in the Vatican to try to find where the ark could be, they did not find it. If they
Huh.
did, they would have colonized Ethiopia.
Right.
So a lot of people say that Ethiopia has already been modernized. They have now, an international monetary fund loan,
Right.
right? So now they're, now the Ark of the Covenant now belongs to the Vatican anyway. Well, they got to find that monk, and that monk is not going to let it go.
Right.
I think it's a because the legend is this monk hasn't died. And I think my understanding, don't quote me on this. This is what I read, but I don't know if it's true or not. But these monks lived for 1,000 years, and then they pass it on to another, and they live 1,000 years.
Hmm.
So I don't understand how, but it could be the being in the presence of the ark sustains your life. I have no clue.
Well, you remember
But
this was in the news not long ago. They for some reason, they probably do every weird thing like that for a purpose, but they're like, oh, the CIA, tried to find the Ark of the Covenant. It's like, why did this,
yeah,
why did
why?
they put that out? I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Why would they need it? What significance would it do unless you perform all of the rituals of the old times of the children of Israel and get it prepared for what? The third temple? Well, I think that they're trying to find ways to bypass Jesus. They're trying to find ways to bypass the blood, trying to find ways to get into heaven without choosing the Son. And if they get a hold of all of the artifacts, if they go back to sacrificing instead of just giving your life to Jesus, that they think that they can bypass the laws because they're following an older contract.
They're at war with themselves. Even like I for some reason I was talking just this thought experiment with somebody that I was talking to earlier. Even if, like, let's just say like this big thing ends. Like, let's just say now Satan does what he wants to do, and like, who is he going to fight now? Is everything going to end? No, because he's always at war with himself. He's his
Right.
own worst enemy. And so
Right.
this whole futile attempt to bypass Jesus, to say, okay, let's bypass blood
Hmm.
altogether, it's fundamentally insanity. And so what they're doing is they are trying so hard to win a game. But even if they win the game, it will bring them no peace because they are their own worst enemy.
The body is the only thing that can hold the spark of life.
Right.
The body's the temple. The Holy Ghost lives in the body. They're trying to figure out a way to build a surrogate that can host the demonic spirits, which are the leftover Nephilim. The Bible says that they roam the desert looking for an oasis, and an oasis would be our bodies, and to be an attachment, to get close to flesh, because they miss being in flesh.
Yes.
And I think what they've been doing, and I have no viable proof, no documentation that I can hold and say, here, this is what they've been building surrogates through clones and all kinds of
Blockchain
different
and
things.
genomics.
And that's another whole nother thing. Synthetic AI,
Yeah. It's a big
surrogate.
rabbit hole.
Mhm.
It's a big rabbit hole.
Right, but if demons can only get in us because of the spark of life, we have that capability. They need to put the spark of life in a surrogate so the demonic can use that spark of life to snap into place with the silver cord. And I don't know how that works. I know that there is a silver cord that Solomon talks about in Ecclesiastes. And 412, this, not 412, no, it's another one. I can't remember, but Solomon talks about a silver cord that's connected to all of us, and that's that silver cord connected directly to God. So when he breathes into us, we're tethered to him, and as we're tethered to him, they can just cut off shards of that power of God and use it for authority and power. And
Phone would be a good way to do that.
a what?
A cell phone.
A cell phone?
Well, I mean, it's like, what has everybody got with them that connects them? It's like, for instance, I don't remember a world where you could just go out and, like, people would have to leave a message. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, you're not home. God, you got an answering machine? Do you remember answering machines? I do remember
Yeah.
answering machines.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, now, if somebody wants to get a hold of me, my phone's always in my pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And so, now I'm more connected to everything else than I was before.
Right.
And so
Well,
that,
that's building the image of the
right.
beast. The image, I don't know if it'll be a surrogate in a human form, a surrogate in a robot form. I don't know. I don't know if it'll be a synthetic spirit, synthetic DNA. I have no idea. But I know that mankind is pushing to build an army of something, whether a surrogate that a clone that can hold a spirit of a demon, where they have full access to the body, or are they going to replicate an idea of it or an image of it and then use that in replacement for what they've been stealing from us all along?
Just some zombies, basically. There's no rotting flesh, only rotting brains.
Well, it could very well be. You could classify a zombie as a demon in a person's body
Or just somebody
that
who's being targeted
that
with.
became a surrogate who allowed the demon possession, like
So
full access.
let me explain what So in my reading of this book, that talks about, if somebody is being targeted with directed energy, how is it that you can be next to them and they will get targeted, but it won't touch you? It's because they need kind of like a brain print. There's a specific um, like I'm trying to think of the right word. It's a specific pattern that they need, and once they have this pattern, that pattern is almost like the system clock. It's almost like a specific a time differential, and that time differential has to match the specific speed that your neurons fire. And if it doesn't match, then they can't put something in.
Hmm.
And so if they can figure out that specific time for you, and it's different for everybody else,
Hmm.
then they can use that. And that is how a directed energy weapon could be used to put a template. So, okay, let's say that a person who has had, very bad suicidal like ideations, and okay, we'll take that brain print from another person. Okay, now let's see, this is your time differential, so we can put that brain print into you using your time differential. And so the idea is generally to zombify or remote control somebody would be to have a dead inside person, a person who, just does the same thing every day. There's nothing, they don't have any joy, they don't,
Hmm.
nothing. And so they exist for no other reason but to, let something else live through them. The algorithm will live through them in a way.
Well, that's it, if they're able to map the brain and figure out where to insert
Oh yeah, they've
the
done
code.
this. They've done all this already.
I don't know. I haven't seen it, but
Watch my series.
it's 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 fascinating. It's interesting.
Scary.
Um,
It's very scary.
but how can they do that on a massive scale? Like, what would they use for to insert that software? What, cell phone towers?
Well, I mean, that's a more loaded question, but fundamentally directed energy weapons,
Right. And you know
whatever that
how
is.
much power you can't just pull up with a van, with a bunch of batteries and use that directed energy weapon to, I mean, the kind of stuff that they want is being researched, but putting into full fruition,
The
let's just say, hey, yeah, they got energy weapons in space. And they can pinpoint people, and they can put a laser on you and zombify you.
It's that we don't have the words. Like if like for us to and that's what I've been trying to do is I've been building a list, a dictionary. It's like 360 entries, but like the technology, if you and I were going to even talk about like what does this do, what does that do, like we don't even have the words for the half of the stuff, and that's what we've been trying to catch up with because
Hmm.
it really is so at a level where if you don't have those words it seems mystical or magic. But I'm convinced that this idea of it's totally artificial, it's cold, it's sterile,
Hmm.
it's really like you said the words that we covered, the artificial breath surrogate. It's
Hmm.
pretty much exactly what it is.
Hmm.
When I was looking at all of the material from all the books you've done, everything fits and lines up perfectly with all of the uh, ideas of algorithms and cybernetic loops and training behavior. Okay, if you do something out of love, you're going to fill somebody else's needs. You're going to meet their needs, and that will
Hmm.
tell that person that you care about them.
Hmm.
But on the opposite end of that, I can force you to do what I want because if you don't do it, something
Hmm.
bad will happen, and you will learn this over and over and over again. And so instead of coming on your own free will and accord out of care and love and compassion and meeting the needs, you can be on the opposite end. And let's, for all intents and purposes, let's look at that as your two priesthoods, the Adamic priesthood and the Cain priesthood.
Hmm.
It's almost perfectly the same because one is cold and reptilian. They say cold blooded,
Hmm.
or think of a huge mega corporation. All these decisions they have to make. They have to make sure that okay, if it's going to be cheaper to just, not do the recall and everybody will get hurt, we'll just do it because it's good business. It's
Profit over
coal.
people.
Yeah, and so it's that same division. And when you really start to look at it,
Mm-hmm.
as we've said already, okay, AI is not alive, never will be alive, and so it will forever be cold. And so
Mm-hmm.
it really it feels like it converges in systems. And I think that I'm that's what I hope to do by the end of my cybernetic series. I'm going to have enough proof, I think, that there is a fundamental connection between this religion. Remember, I told you their religion is science, but it's this transhumanism, man as a computer. Yuval Noah Harari, the guy who speaks for the World Economic Forum, it's that type of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, don't get me wrong, and it's like, these are like, it's kind of scary because, a lot of people they don't know if is it connected. It's like it's kind of making people go crazy, and it hasn't even been out for 3 years.
Well, he said humans are hackable,
Indeed, they are. That's
and
what, seriously, you
said,
should watch my series. It's good.
yeah, and said that a person now in a coffee shop with a laptop can hack into someone else's body.
And that's true. So there's the answer to your question. Maybe they
Yeah,
can pull up in a little van. They can
yeah.
do it
Well,
without that.
but but we don't have the information as to the how they do it.
I do.
You do.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then that's for
Watch,
another show.
watch. No, seriously. Watch my series. I think you will like it.
Okay.
I'm doing some reading now, so I mean, you can really just listen to it. But yeah, it's. I understand. Like, that's kind of what I'm trying to bridge the gap as best I can, because there's so much, and people literally don't even have the words. So I have to give people the words first, and so
Is
that's
this
why.
also along with Sabrina Wallace and her
It
work as
is.
well? Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes. So she's got a really good understanding of it. But really, the way that I'm doing it is, first I read the 6G white paper,
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted to read it myself, and I decided it would be the best way to do it was just to do a series. So I read the whole thing. And 6G talks about how we're going to have, they've invented things called meta atoms, meta surfaces. They're basically tiny chips that can completely program how light goes across them. And so if you have enough of these in an area, you could program how the light bounces off of every one of these nano-sized chips. And you can look up the Visor Surf project. It's a, well, I can show you. It's got like a little diagram, and it shows you what these look like. This is what a meta surface looks like. Hyper surfaces and meta surfaces. But see, these are very small. That's it's drawn to help you like see it. But
So
these are,
light hits it, and it can move the photons somewhere else.
yeah, they can steer they have beam steering technology. This
Okay.
this stuff is, it's just so advanced. But the point being is that with this, being able to control light and energy at such a small scale,
Mm-hmm.
what happens is, if you research like meta atoms and these meta surfaces, what it will say is that it has special properties that they can do when they do it at this small scale. It enables them to use and have special properties. They can do certain manipulations that wouldn't be possible at larger scales. And so then, this ties into all the
For
stuff.
what? Invisibility or what? I mean, I don't understand what this little microchip and what it's doing with the light. I mean,
So,
I could think of possibilities, but I mean, what does that have to do with, transhumanism?
so, well, okay, on a micro scale, you could use this to completely change how something is absorbed on the cellular level. You can use this to completely change what part of the body a certain molecule is absorbed into. I looked into PLGA nanoparticles, which now they're saying are these miracle cancer cures. What it does is it's polylactic co-glycolic acids, and
Mm-hmm.
so it gets into a person and it breaks down into glycolic acid and
Mm-hmm.
lactic acid. Now, those two together, by manipulating the ratio of lactic acid to glycolic acid, they can actually control how much water gets absorbed at that small scale. And they can use that to, say, target a specific medication or something. They want it to go to this part of the body and only this part of the body, nowhere
Mm-hmm.
else. They can do that type of tailoring. Here, it says metasurfaces, thin and planar artificial structures have recently enabled the realization of novel electromagnetic and optical components with engineered and even unnatural functionalities. These include electromagnetic invisibility of objects, cloaking, total
Huh.
radiation absorption, as well as fine-grained manipulation of impinging electromagnetic emissions in terms of direction, polarity, phase, and power in a frequency selective manner. And
Hmm.
it, yeah, I mean, I'll have to send you the dictionary that I've put together. But what you run into is that these are such advanced topics. Even if the information is for the most part in the public domain, it's just like nobody knows these words. Like, how are you going to search for any of this if you don't even know what a meta atom is? Well, meta means dead.
It does, doesn't it? In the
Every
Hebrew, it means dead.
Well, we live in a metaverse.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
what does that mean though? If we were living in a metaverse, don't you think we'd have zombies that have no rotting
Well,
flesh, just rotting brains, which was the word of the year about a year ago?
every hospital has a zombie apocalypse emergency guide, and the Department of Homeland Security has a zombie apocalypse protocol. And there's a lot of rumors and conspiracy theories of, like, outbreaks, and a lot of people like have hidden cameras inside a CIA meeting. You hear that? I don't know what that was. Did you hear that? Did a car drive by you or
Might
something?
might have been out like something going
Anyway,
on.
but yeah, CIA having meetings, and they're secretly, talking about a zombie apocalypse that they had to go in and stop. I, I don't know.
What if people got the bad? When they hear zombie, they think Walking Dead, but the term zombie is actually a term that they use. The army refers to these sleeper soldiers as zombies.
Hmm.
And so perhaps they are really having these drills, but when they say zombie, they mean we've been torturing people. If you go into the Epstein files, you can pull up a 200-page document that says sexual targeting of some prime minister's children by police. And so we've been torturing all these people and making them zombies. And so we need to be prepared for if they get a little pissed off because of what we've been doing to them. Maybe that's what they mean, but people think it's
Maybe.
Walking Dead.
I don't know. Well, look what
I
happened to David Wilcock, man.
I
He died.
Have you seen Breaking Bad?
Yeah.
You remember the vacuum guy who disappears people? Like,
Yeah.
that's what I think. Some not I don't know. I don't know if that was foul play or if he really killed himself, but that I think these other people who are disappearing, some of them may be disappeared because they all leave on foot, they all leave their wallet and stuff at home.
Hmm.
I don't know, but all of these people dropping dead, a lot of people are dropping dead right now. Whistleblowers, survivors, I think
Well,
some of
it's
them
not
might.
because of zombies, and it's not because of meta atoms.
Well, it's actually
But if
because
you
of
follow the money, they're talking about UFOs, and they've got information on the intergalactic federation and all of that stuff. But look, people don't die unless what they say hurts the pockets of
right.
bankers.
Hmm.
And so what was David Wilcock saying that was hurting the pockets of bankers? Well, he was turning Christian,
I was
and he was starting to see the lies of Gaia and the lies of Corey Good when he was working with them. And I could see, dude, I could tell he was starting to look at all the esoteric stuff and come to a conclusion like I did, that it's all of the esoteric is just to steal breath.
so I was
And,
gonna come to that
and
conclusion. I think maybe they're getting rid of the people who can help. What's coming. We need to get rid of the people who can stop people from, you know, people who might be able to change people's minds. Those people have got to go.
yeah, and David had millions, millions of followers. And remember when I said, I've said this to my audience many times, many, many times. The moment you get a million views or a million viewers, you can change America
Right.
through your, like look at Joe Rogan.
Right.
Joe Rogan can say something and can change the stock market.
It's true.
And so that kind of power isn't favored by Secret Service.
Unfortunately, they're one of the tools that they use for something like that. Silent assassinations through
Mm-hmm.
adapting networks, and it says
Mm-hmm.
basically it's in the computer virus term. It's basically designed to go through all of the different torture mind virus and algorithms, all of them until one of them will ultimately finish the person off. And basically, it says it's this system is a classified illegal because it cannot recognize surrender.
Mm.
And so the weapons that are being deployed in some cases, generally, if a person can do it themselves, then that's what they will have. They don't want to. They need plausible deniability. And so like this stuff that is being deployed against people, I don't know. I think they could do it, but some people, it might just have been like generally, they might have been dealing with some stuff and they might not have been able to fix it. I mean, I don't know. That's why it sucks. But like a lot of, like there was somebody in the survivor community who had done some interviews with Emma's channel about their experiences, and they just passed away. So there's been some targeted individual people on Substack who are have people who have posted, somebody passed away. So I don't know. It's I don't know. Something I told a friend, it's not good whatever's got these people disappearing. It's never
Yeah,
good.
but this isn't the first time it's happened. I mean, under
Definitely
the
not.
Obama administration, 130 scientists
It's been
died, and
publicized a lot though.
well, lately,
Yeah.
the first time ever, the right, or the conservative media, is releasing all that stuff. And you gotta ask yourself, well, why?
Right.
Why are they? Because they're using that for propaganda.
It's not the Epstein files.
Yeah, and it could very well be anything to steer them away, because we know Trump's on it.
Right.
He was on Lolita Express, what, 13 times? You know?
It's people are being like they have to get people to not look at those because really we're at a point where like do you just listen to the people who say everything but what's on those files, or do you actually sit down and go and read through like one or two of them? And once you read
Mhm.
through one or two of the files that they released, I think you'll actually see that something is being covered up.
I've made a decision a few months ago to not talk about things that I don't have good data to support my my idea, my theory.
Mm-hmm.
And it does not mean that that what's out there isn't happening. It just means the only way I understand how to fight the devil is through court. And you can't take that asshole to court without evidence. And unfortunately, those who practice esotericism, witchcraft, rituals, they are also really good at covering their tracks.
It's true.
Really good. And it's really up to us, the people, to dig and find that information, because when people have solid information and then they start going on podcasts like ours and start spreading that information with sources, backed up sources, like, for example, the Southern Poverty Law Group. I don't
Yeah.
know. You know what I'm talking about?
Incorporated LLC for business.
Right. They just got caught paying white supremacist extremists to go protest. Okay, and the Southern Poverty Law Center is against racism. And they got caught paying for people to promote racism.
So that's in the systems, the cybernetic idea. It talks about how that is basically what happens is you set up a group to fight racism or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but then they have employees who rely on that business for their paycheck, and so they have
Mm-hmm.
to justify their job.
Mm-hmm.
So how do they justify their job?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is the thing that pops up almost any time you create an organization who will do or accomplish something.
Mm-hmm.
And then it loses. Now you remember the Freemasons, that which is
Mm-hmm.
lost. Well, it's a symbol for, a religion will start based on a good idea and helping people, but then it will get so big over time. It will lose the very thing that makes it what it is. And this is a reoccurring motif. And so that which is lost is
Mm-hmm.
we've fixed racism. Now we're going to be out of a job. So then they go to create more racism or
Right. That's the
actors.
whole
It's a feedback loop.
Firemen will burn the forest just to keep their job.
It's a feedback loop basically. That's the
Yeah.
feedback loop.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, and again, that's exposing, but that we now have data to back it up, that there was an actual entity making hundreds of millions of dollars to fight racism and was promoting racism.
Right.
So my point is, that's hard data that you can use to expose Satan and his system.
Right.
But you can't, when you and I learned this when I debunked the fall of the cabal. You can't fight the devil with half truths. You've got to have your evidence to back it up 100%.
Right.
And if you do, because the truth isn't scared of being exposed, because the truth is the truth. The truth doesn't have to hide or cover itself up. And if we as the people, if we actually, did our due diligence, and because I think it is our job to expose what any corruption is going on in our cities, our counties, our states, and our governments. It's our job to expose those. And there's a risk involved.
Right.
And you can see the risk. David Wilcock, scientists, people who say we didn't go to the moon. Well, all of this stuff needs a honest research source approach. That's the only way we're going to fight the enemy. Because then you can take them to court. You can take them to court. You've got the evidence. But you can't go to court and say, this guy's a Satanist. He killed people. Well, where's your evidence? Well, everyone else told me. I got it. It's on my Facebook page.
Right.
I saw it on TikTok.
Right.
We need to hold ourselves accountable to our information, is what I'm trying to say.
That's what Bill Cooper used to say. Don't believe anything until you can prove it using your own research.
Mm-hmm.
One
Yeah.
of the reasons why I always like going back to his stuff is because he was one of the very few people to approach this issue before social media. When you listen to his stuff, he was doing it in the late 90s. And I always have to remind myself, like, man, there was not any of the large scale type of, it was just starting, sure, but it wasn't
Mhm.
anywhere like how it is today. So when I listen to it, it's nice to know that there's not been all of that people just hearing something from a video, and then it gets corrupted a little here and then gets corrupted here. It's nice to hear people who read from the book, and that's why have started trying to do that. Just even if it's, I did a video the other night. There was some interesting thing in entry in a dictionary, and it talked about how like threads and weaving and sewing was one of the more higher form ideas and symbols in the human mind. Because if you start, how do these ideas evolve? What made us understand thread and weaving? And it starts to say, well, this idea of small thread that's, it's very tiny and thin, how everything fits together. And it talks about how, it seems like perhaps everything happens for a reason, or there is a somebody weaving a tapestry. There's a something I heard a long time ago. Wish I had it, but talks about first they see the calendar that things are cyclical, and it's a wheel at first, okay, and then they go into clock making, and then now it's a machine, and God must be the clockmaker, and then they go into computers and they say, oh
Mhm.
well, it's like we start understanding things with an extra layer, and we
Mhm.
start understanding things more and more, and at the end of it, like I said, history ties everything together, and so it almost weaves everything together and says, okay, look at everything that's happened under history, and then you will find that all the prophecies and all of the things that said that they were going to happen, and
Mhm.
all of the archetypes that repeat, and you see this same evil that over and over and over again corrupts people and societies, and governments and empires fall in decadence. And it's just interesting. You start to see that, but only when you have the record. What was it that you said? The witness, something, the witness or record of, in the um, when we were talking about the cave of treasures, and you said there a tablet of witness or
The
something,
tablet of witness. Yeah, it's a record
almost
of
a
Adam and
historical
Eve's
record.
experience. Yeah, a historical record that cannot be debunked.
You
It's
have to have,
there. It hasn't been found yet.
well, my point being is, like, that is one half. Now you have to have somebody to find it.
Hmm.
Okay, so the record is there, but
Hmm.
now somebody has got to come and validate the record.
Right, and that's why when I do a show, let's just say, pull a topic off. If I was going to do a show on uh, the moon landing of 1969, what I would do is I would find every book I can about NASA, about JPL, about the history of Russia and America, and the Cold War, and all of the books that debunk it, all the books that were for it, all of the books on the technicalities of it. I grab everything I can get
Now we can do
until
that,
where until I'm satisfied with I have both sides,
right?
all sides. And then when I put together a show, I look at it from all of those angles and try to come to the most simplest explanation.
Well,
And usually the most simplest explanation is what disappoints me, because I get disappointed every time when I download a bunch of books from the 1100s up until just now about economies and how things have worked, kingdoms coming up and down, and then I was like the fall of the cabal, convinced when that first came out. Oh my God, the whole world's run by Jews. Well, not the whole world. It's just not. They don't control China. They don't control Russia, and you can tell in their actions. You know,
Right.
you can tell the fruits of these countries, especially in Russia. Now, maybe China, sure, because there's a lot of books that really prove that um, the Jewish people settled. A lot of Jewish families settled in China,
That's
and
interesting.
but that doesn't mean that, oh, now they're, China's Jewish. It doesn't mean that the Jews took over all of their banking. All of that kind of mentality I want to get
It's
out of
all or
of
nothing.
well, it's too simple. It's too simple of an explanation.
It's
Jews control the world and they all eat babies.
so
That's too simple of an explanation when it comes to the history of things.
one of the
It's
first
not it's not true.
one of the first shows that I ever did on your channel was destruction by dialectic, and that's what it is. It's basically the assumption that there's a right answer or there's a wrong answer, but very often than not, every issue that means something or that is important is like those are the number one issues that you can't solve with a right or a wrong. Like it's more fine tuned than that. There's
Mhm.
much more that goes into it. But what you were talking about just now with that's basically now with the internet and stuff, we can do stuff like that, and we can. That's very fortunate that we can actually see from different perspectives now. So you're applying the trivium process. It's exactly what you're doing. That's how you approach truth and knowledge, is that you have to find data from eclectic sources. The first step,
Mhm.
your input, your grammar. That's why I have such a big focus on words,
Mhm.
grammar, and knowledge. And you need it from even the sources that you don't, maybe you don't agree with, because, like you said, that's kind of you have to be able to compare two different things. And that gives you the four answers: who, what, when, and where. So the second step, the processing, that's where you start to use these sub steps that like filtration, correlation, analysis. And
Mhm.
it talks about the quadrivium, which is almost a step up, but this idea that you apply these techniques on the data that you have collected. And that can mean different things for different people, but filtration, for instance, okay, some of this I'm going to use, and maybe this is not pertinent to what I need, and I'm going to focus on this part of it, so I'll use that for some other time. Are these correlated? Correlation isn't causation, etc. And that gives you the why. That's your who, what, where, when, and why. So
What's with the all-seeing eye behind all the graphics?
oh, that's because it was I stole this slide from somebody else who taught it. The guy Mark Passio taught
Mm.
the trivium, and I just took the slides because he leaves the images
I'm just
like
saying,
that.
I know my audience are looking at it, and we talk about symbolism all the time when we put
Well,
out stuff. You better
see,
be careful there,
well,
pal.
I did explain in my other video that I did on this. As a matter of fact, that symbol in the back is called the triform symbol. That's on like the book, The Aquarian Conspiracy uses it. The new tech transhumanist NRX platform uses it. But
Mm.
the idea of that symbol ultimately is your three branches, your three. Uh, you have the church, the state, the mob. You have
Mm.
positive, negative, neutral. It's the same idea of three and four's correlation. Now, three and four correlate in the golden ratio, because if you look at a triangle, you have a side of three, a side of four, and then their ratio is the golden ratio. But then your output, rhetoric and wisdom, that's to teach to other people, because in doing that, you force yourself to, um, okay, I'm going to tell you this, but maybe you don't understand it the way that I do, so I have to try and reword it. I have
Mhm.
to try and take what I know and figure out how to make it simpler and more approachable, and then I
Mhm.
have to convey that to you. And so
Right.
it's through doing these three steps that help you get a step closer to the truth. Now, are you going to be at the truth? No. You're going to have to do this probably throughout the rest of your life. It's like, are you ever going to get to the one truth while you're here and breathing and alive? No, you're going to have to improve every single day.
Yeah, if you look at my shows from a year ago to what I put out today, the difference is just dramatic because I've just and maybe people don't see it. I see it. I'm like, wow, how professional did I get? Holy cow, you know, I'm like holding myself to journalist standards. It's kind of weird, but it also feels good. I can go to bed every night knowing that when I put out information, I'm not grabbing hearsay.
All right.
I'm not grabbing. Did you hear that growl?
I don't know. That might have been me or something. I don't know.
There's, I
I
heard a
can't. I can't.
growl.
Like, I don't know if I hear it because my headphones are kind of noise canceling.
No, it's all good. I just heard a growl. Yeah, it's I just feel better knowing that I'm putting out what I know at this time today is the truth. But it does change. And I've been coming back to my older shows and redoing them based on, more facts or just repenting and saying and turning away from following bullshit,
Right.
because I really think that most of the stuff that's out there right now that we're all doom scrolling and looking
It
at,
is.
I think it's all bullshit.
It is.
I think it's all actual manufactured and created to keep us going in another direction, so we don't focus on the real issue, which I think is the Bank for International Settlements.
Yeah.
Just
First,
the
it's us.
central bank of central banks. What are they doing? And anything else, who cares? Yeah, throw them,
I was
throw them
gonna.
aliens, throw
What
them.
you said is it's us. We're the issue. For like first and foremost, we got to look at ourselves.
I say that every night. We need to change our hearts.
Right.
I was just talking to someone last night saying Trump is the perfect scapegoat for your actions. He is the perfect
He's
guy
gonna.
for you to blame
He'll
so
die
you
for
don't
America's
have to
sins.
blame yourself.
Yeah, he's the well today, as a
I'm
matter
just
of
saying, and
fact,
now I'm not
is
just pointing to the
424.
left. I'm pointing also to the right. Biden is the perfect scapegoat for the right to blame someone else besides their own heart, because it's them, it's the people who elected them. And you can scream all you want about fraud.
This
It
has
doesn't
gotten.
matter. Fraud doesn't even matter. Our hearts brought them there. The American dream, the American dream of covetousness, of keeping up with the Joneses, having a bigger house, a brand new car, and we're all guilty of this.
Yes.
And if our hearts don't change, God is not going to give us a leader until our hearts change. And that's what the Old Testament says over and over and over again. The children of Israel, when their hearts turn towards Baal and Moloch, because it's easier, because Satan gives them everything they want up front. Here you go. But the damage comes later. The damage comes through judgment. And Satan knows that he's going to be the one that gets to execute the judgment, because it's not God. God just says, okay, guys, you're not listening to me anymore. I got to let my hand off of my protection on you. And unfortunately, you're not going to like what's coming. But he warns us over and over and over. He
Exactly.
gives us hundreds of years. In fact, I'm so convinced that we're just repeating one of the times in the Old Testament. America will be judged for the sins that we're doing right now, but we're not going to be judged right now. It's going to be in the future, and God is going to prepare us for that judgment. It's going to come. But there also, if you understand the Bible, there's one thing that America has done that no one worldwide has even held a finger to. Americans people have given more money to support the word and to support Christianity and to spread the gospel than any other country worldwide. It's not the leadership. The government won't send money to send Bibles to Russia. So we haven't gotten that back. You see, when you give, God shakes it, presses it, and then hands it back, but in more abundance. Well, we haven't gotten that yet. The people, the leaders, sure, they live in abundance, but we haven't received that jubilee from all of the work we've done ever since World War II, ever since we became America. And that's what I think is going to be a jubilee that's going to happen. Now, it doesn't mean our debts will be forgiven, but it will mean that a lot of banks that we do owe to will crumble, and someone will pick up the tab, and, well, who knows if they'll hound you down for that debt. But regardless, this whole thing, all of this stuff we've been talking about, where we started with Adam and Eve, the cave of treasures, the bones of Adam, the tablet of witness, and then going into transhumanism and going into technology and artificial intelligence and stealing breath from either the Ancient of Days all the way up until now. All of this stuff has happened before. There's nothing new under the sun. God took care of his own during every catastrophe, and the Bible proves it, because you look and you see there's restitution after every book. After every book, restitution. God comes in and saves those who are for him. For him. All the others, yeah, the path that leads to destruction, they all have hard times, but not those people who trust in the Lord, who trust in the Lord Jesus Christ. And we're going to be, you think the technology we have now is scary. Well, we're 20 years behind on what they're really using against us.
Right.
So why are we worried about all of this? What's the rush to get this information out there? What's the rush to scare people? I want to make sure that when I'm done with my shows, that people understand that God's not upset. He's not mad. He's not angry. He's not the one that steals, kills, and destroys. It's the devil. And if you let the devil in through anything that you do that hurts other people, you're going to have a rough time until you finally decide that you don't want that in your life.
Right.
And I think that soon, you're right. And I think that soon, technology is going to push God out. We're not going to need prayer, because we're going to have all the answers. We've learned that through Dr. Google. Everyone's a doctor now. Technology is just everywhere. And it's really up to us to just stop, take a step back, take a big deep breath, and recognize that if you stand still, the only thing you do is breathe. And that comes directly from God. And all he wants to do is have a relationship with you to change your circumstances. And he can't do that unless you want to change your heart. Because remember in the Bible, when people asked, Jesus, heal me. And then there was one time where he said, are you sure you want healed? Some people don't want Jesus to heal them because it'll take their monthly disability check away. And that's a heart thing. Because who are you putting your trust in? The hardest thing for a man and a woman to do is to give everything up and give it to God. And that's where you stop worrying. You start living. You just say, whatever happens, it doesn't matter. I'm not worried about the future. It doesn't exist anymore. What exists is right now, I have the ability to talk to God anytime I want. I think that's the key to happiness. That's the key to joy. Everything else outside of us is a distraction. Everything outside of us is a lie. The truth is in here. I don't think you'll ever find it anywhere else. And all of the religions focus on a deity outside that you worship. Christianity is the only one where it's inside you. And it's the only one that gave you a free gift of salvation.
Man, I don't think I could have. I don't think I could have wrapped it up better than that. That was really good.
Well,
One of
thanks,
the
dude.
better. That was one of the better little. I don't know. What do you call that? Like, not. It was not the whole show. It was just like a portion of what you said. But that was like a really good. I don't have to clip that and make a clip out of that. I like that. That was good.
Well, it's not me. I can't take the glory,
It
dude.
was
I'm a
definitely
dumb hick.
spirited. You know, it was definitely spirited. You know, you can sense spirited things like that. That's I guess that's what I was saying.
Well, one day we're all going to get the truth. We're all going to know what really happened. And that's when we're going to get to choose, you know? And we're not the ones under investigation, okay? It's the fallen angels who are under investigation, who are being examined right now by the witnesses, and that's us. God created us outside of them so that he could have a witness to be the jury to send them to prison so that they can't call bias on God. And we're in this holy war. And it's been going on for thousands of years. And the easiest way to get out of it is to recognize that there's good and evil. Choose good. It's better. Evil doesn't feel good.
No.
Evil wants you to cast spells on people. That makes no sense to me.
Well, it puts you into, where you're at war with yourself. You know, it gets to the point where you're not even fighting anything outside you anymore. You're just fighting yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think
Choose good.
it's a good.
Life will be easier. Smiling is a nice thing. It attracts. It attracts. People are. It's like a magnet when you
It
smile
is.
at people.
It is.
You know. But frowns. No.
I think that's a good pin to stick it in. What do you think?
You
Any
got it,
last
buddy.
anything else other than that? I think that was great.
No. No, that's it. And thank you so much for having me on your show again, dude. I really
I love
appreciate
it.
that.
I really look forward to it. I think a lot of the viewers do too. It's always, I don't know, I think the stuff that you always teach me and whatever I teach you, and then the words of wisdom, the icing on the cake.
Amen.
So I
Amen.
appreciate it. Anytime you want, you're welcome. So
Love you, buddy. Thank you for having me.
you're always welcome, buddy. Everybody, we will see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Bye.